And welcome back. The public outcry was as huge as the public inconvenience it had caused. And the ban ended just as soon as it came into effect. Its damage to both businesses and persons yet to be fully ascertained. For Governor Mike Sonko of Nairobi, it has been an awkward 36 hours, complete with what looked like a late-night retreat by a governor scorched to the skin by merciless public outrage. It's not too early for one to pronounce that just like his predecessors, Mike Sonko has fallen flat on his face in the attempt to keep matatus out of the central business district that is in Nairobi. Now, without a doubt, the CBD is choking with vehicles of all types and would easily be described as one of the most congested city centers in the continent. But who will bell the cat? Mike Sonko is the latest to be listed in the body count as city authorities fail again to tame the beast of the CBD. Tonight, we push the ball upstairs. We'll speak to Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Waziri, text us on 2422. On Twitter, use the hashtag Newsnight. You've seen what has happened. Now the ban has been lifted and it comes as a relief to many, but also concerned that how on earth could such a crucial decision be made without proper planning initially? Were you part of this? Because he kept on referring to working with the national government.
Well, thank you, Hussein, for inviting me this evening. I think the point to make and the point to emphasize is that any decision taken by both county government and national government is supposed to be for the good of the public.
For the people, yeah.
And even this one, about yesterday, was supposed to actually to help in terms of managing the decongestion issues of the city. And so, yes, there was a lot of inconvenience, which we cannot deny. And we regret for that, actually, as both national government and county government.
So you work together on this?
But the crucial issue to make and to emphasize is that we've done a lot of consultations. I can tell you as early as 5 a.m. this morning, Governor Mike Sonko and myself were talking as to how to deal with the matter. And these are the kind of consultations which really we must have between the two levels of government. And through those consultations, the matter has been resolved. And that's what we should be really emphasizing on.
Well, that is important. But here we have leaders, especially in Nairobi, who actually said yesterday and today that Mike Sonko is working alone, not working with the national government through the Nairobi regeneration team. Are you facing any resistance from the governor on this, especially in decongesting the city?
Well, for us, we like to keep, frankly, politics out of all this because our interests converge. National interest and county government interest, they do converge. And we work very closely with Governor Mike Sonko. We do work very closely, not just for this project, but a lot of other projects. You've seen, for example, when we are doing the Nairobi regeneration project, when we are doing the roads, when we are doing the drainage systems, so when you're doing beautification of the city. So it's a matter of maybe enhancing that collaboration to make sure it bears positive fruit.
Yeah, I mean, with due respect, I know you'd want to keep off the politics, as you say, but from what we are gathering, you are really not working together. Not you necessarily as the Transport Cabinet Secretary, but that is your docket, but generally the national government and the Nairobi regeneration team. Well, is that a fact? Like for what happened yesterday, was the national government, did the national government okay this?
Well, I think we have to put it in perspective. There are certain bylaws which fall under the county government, for which the county government has got a full mandate, right? But where there is interface between national government and county government, there is, of course, collaboration. That's why we had to place this course as early as 5 a.m. this morning. Otherwise, if there's no collaboration, we won't be talking 5 a.m. in the morning.
All right.
And so I think Kenyans should need to know that there is collaboration, there is consultation, and that's why the matter has been resolved within 24 hours.
Okay, then yes. I mean, okay, I'll leave it at that. Yes. But that can also mean there was no collaboration prior, and that is why you had to make these calls as early as 5 a.m. because you saw Mike Sonko's statement as early as 6 a.m. thereafter. But anyway, be that as it may, you're talking about the regeneration team and working together. First, you talked about imposing a 30-day deadline on yourselves to some promises you made. But then there was also talk about a deadline in December and December 12th, which is next week. Some of the things you're supposed to do was automation of bus termini, minimal traffic in the city, launch of the rapid bus transit system, set up Nairobi Traffic Management Committee to deal with traffic problems, and other issues like infrastructure development, a clean city you're talking about, launch of the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, which is at the heart of the delivering affordable housing, of course, and equipping high-volume health centers. But with a bias now to the decongestion plans, because that is the problem we're facing currently, not facing currently, but it's in the media currently. Has anything been done, really? Has anything been done? Because it's been months since then, and we haven't seen any improvement until we saw what happened yesterday, which was a nightmare.
Let me tell you, Hussein, when you discuss about or talk about decongestion, there are very many factors which come into play. It's not just one initiative like this one for yesterday.
Yes.
One of the key issues which will be critical in terms of decongesting the city of Nairobi is to develop appropriate infrastructure. Because infrastructure is what basically helps in terms of moving people in and moving people out,
yes,
of the city.
Right.
And I can tell you, we have done our mathematics. Nairobi is a big issue because, as you may have heard before, during the day like now, we have 7 million people in the city of Nairobi. At night, we shall be about 3.5 million. So we have 3.5 million people getting out of the city and living around the surrounding counties of Kajiado, Machakos, you know, Kiambu, and Murang'a. Yeah. And so what we've done ourselves as part of the ministry's initiatives is to make sure we develop infrastructure which will be able to carry people out of Nairobi and bring people back into Nairobi. Some of these things we are doing, we are not actually shouting about them, but you would like to make sure that when they happen, people will see what government has been trying to do over the past so many months.
Okay, I'll enumerate some of them later, some of these things. I mean, to be important for Kenyans to know what you're doing. Yes. But as far as the rapid bus transport system is concerned, we just saw the marking of the Thika superhighway, and that's it. We didn't see anything after that. We were expecting to see the buses that were promised to come, and we have not seen anything after.
Well, that's a process which is ongoing. And let me tell you, because I know I've been asked that question many times.
Several times, yes.
To say, did we just mark the roads and
leave it at that? Because that is actually what it is.
Yes.
Yes.
What we actually realized is that as we are doing this BRT project, which is critical, we must harmonize. We must harmonize the BRT, which is bus rapid transit system, with the train commuter system.
Train commuter
system. Because you see, the issue is, you may have a train commuter system bringing people in the city of Nairobi, and then what happens to those people? So we have decided basically to merge the two projects. We have a major project which actually was just approved by Cabinet last week to basically have what we are calling Nairobi Commuter Rail.
Nairobi Commuter Rail,
Nairobi Commuter Rail. And in this project, we will bring in up to 232,000 people every day. From Ruiru, from Syokimau, from Embakasi. There are about 5 different lines.
Using existing rail lines,
which is going to be upgraded. Where together we're bringing what we call the diesel multiple units. Yeah, this is something which we are already working on, already approved by Cabinet, and we shall be bringing this equipment by actually around February next year. But that project must be tied up to a BRT, because you bring all these people, then what happens to them? I'm
assuming you bring all these people to
the central railway station.
Yeah, so yes. Would you need buses from there?
So then from there, because these people need to go to Gara, they need to go to Kenyatta National Hospital, they need to go to Westlands. So we are developing, and today we discussed actually with even the governor of Nairobi, how we shall have a joint team, which you now decide which routes will be determined and which will be dedicated for this particular purpose. So the two teams must work together. For example, there's a plan to make, say, Moi Avenue, one of the sides of Moi Avenue, dedicated to these BRTs, getting now the passengers out of the Nairobi Central Station. Yeah. Haile Selassie Avenue, going all the way towards Kenyatta National Hospital, Muthurwa. So there's a plan which you're putting in place.
From what you're saying, I'm assuming then at that time, because Mike Sonko has promised that this is not the end. Ultimately, these matatus will still not be allowed in the city center. I'm assuming that's what you mean.
Well,
that is these buses that will be operating in the city center.
When that happens, then indeed we don't need matatus coming to the city center. Because these buses, you'll be going to what we call nodes, Gara, going to the National Hospital, Muthurwa, and so matatus they'll be stopping at those nodes, and these buses now be circulating the passengers within that inner circle of Nairobi City.
They have raised concerns. What is the concerns about whether we have enough termini for that? We saw what happened yesterday, the congestion in this termini. I'm assuming you'll have to, there'll be more infrastructure in terms of developing more termini. But
yes.
One of the concerns that many people say is the reason why most of these things are not happening is that matatu industry players say the move to stop them from accessing the CBD is to create room for other interested parties to bring buses, the buses you're talking about. First, who will own these buses? Is it the government, and is it time government controls that public transport system? Because they feel they'll be pushed out by other people who are eyeing that lucrative deal.
Well, the fact of the matter is the Matatu Owners Association and other major players within the matatu industry, already they've organized themselves into an association. Before we started talking about BRT, Hussein, they were already themselves trying to procure some of these buses. They've been to India, they've been to South Africa, they've been to China, sourcing these buses. But for us as a government, the key thing is to create a catalyst. So whereby we show that the pilot scheme can work. We bring so many buses.
As the government?
As a government.
Okay, not private players.
Not private sector. Okay. Like these buses which we shall be bringing, the initial lot will be about 64 buses.
By when? February? That's
by February next year, in about 3 months' time.
By then February next year, they'll start operation?
They'll start operation.
Together with the commuter rail system?
Together with the commuter rail by February. And the idea is, that's a catalyst because we have done a calculation. For you to have a proper BRT system in Nairobi, you require about 900 buses. So the balance, the gap, will be filled up by the private sector.
So ultimately the private sector will
play
a role in this. And this is what they're really worried about. Let's go to, you're talking about all these plans that is important. Now you're giving a timeline of February. But it's not the first time we've heard about this. The World Bank gave a 30 billion shilling loan to Kenya 6 years ago. And this has not been utilized. Another 6 billion was given by EU for this purpose. Some of the things you're supposed to do is the commuter rail system you're talking about, the bus rapid transport system, mass transit corridors, some of these roads, major infrastructures. Of course, the government is also, Kenyans also pay for this. Construction of major highways, Kangemi to Imara Daima, Tala Tungong, Rongai to Kenol in Muranga, Kiambu to Imara Daima, and Kayole Tungong. All this to be completed initially, this is to be completed by December 31st this year. That is not happening again. Even the World Bank was not pleased with how slow the implementation was. So for people who have been watching this, because this is not the first time we're talking about decongesting the city, we have the money or access to money and have done nothing with it for the last 6 years.
I'll tell you this month, last month of November, we had a very major meeting with the EU and the partners. And we agreed on the timelines. For example, we said we require now to submit the final proposal to the EU. To do so, we require the consultant to prepare the paperwork, and he was given until January this coming year to make sure they submit the proposal. Upon submission, the EU, you prepare whatever documentation so that by March we can have now the process, being implemented.
Right.
And they are now we are very clear. Because you see, BRT, unfortunately, is not an easy proposal because of the infrastructure which we've had in the past. If we had planned this BRT 50 years ago, before Nairobi was built up and everything else, I can tell you it was going to be a lot easier. But we are doing what we can to make sure it happens.
But we've been given money or access to money for the last 6 years. And here we are again.
Now it's being deployed.
Talking about February
money
again.
Is being deployed. Like I said, already we have the offer on the table. Yeah, the proposal from the EU will be actualized from March.
Okay.
And thereafter, if we don't have this process up and running from, say, March next year, let's have another debate here. And then you tell me what you happen.
I don't know if that is punitive enough, just to have another debate. We have planned to decongest Nairobi, Waziri, as you know, even before you became a minister, not only in transport, but even before.
And let me tell you also,
other
major things we've done, because that's just one element.
Yes, in terms of decongesting, yes.
Right. One of the things we've been trying to do is to avoid people driving to the city of Nairobi if they don't have to.
Yes, and I was coming to that.
Yes,
I was coming to that.
I can tell you.
Right. Let me just ask you this one more final question about timings and planning.
Yes.
We planned to decongest Nairobi for the last 10 years. This is since 2008, when you're talking about Mudhurwa being the passenger drop-off point. Interestingly, then it is Mike Sonko who actually went to court to stop that. How things can change. But can we still afford to say we are planning and until when? 2008 to now is what, 10 years?
The difference is, now I'm giving you timelines about implementation, not about getting a plan approved. I'm giving you a timeline when you like to see those new locomotives and rolling stock. I'm giving a timeline when you should see the buses. And I'm giving you a timeline when we shall create these corridors which I'm talking about.
When do we create these corridors? Which one do you start with? Which one do you prioritize? And
actually, we do them concurrently. Yeah? Like now, we agreed today, this morning, at a meeting which we had with Mike Sonko, that we shall get the teams working together, create the critical corridors in terms of CBD, right? In the meantime, on our side, we are procuring the buses, we are procuring those locomotives. So upon arrival, they will be deployed, same day, without further delays. Because Kenyans, let me tell you, they are tired of waiting. It's true, they've been waiting for so long.
For so long.
And that's what we are saying.
You still want us to wait until February, okay.
That's what you're saying, Hussein, is whatever we say, we give timelines. Whatever we say, we give timelines. There are things this government has done which were promised 40 years ago. For example, this issue about the Mombasa, Jomo Kenyatta Airport, express highway, going all the way to Kagemi. It's been talked about for how many years? Maybe 40 years. Now it's actually happening. We have engineers on site. And the idea is to make sure we also take a very big chunk of all the vehicles coming to the city. Because every day we have 190,000 vehicles coming to the city of Nairobi. If we got a chunk of that out of the way, then it will happen. It's the first time we shall be saying we have a circular road going around the city of Nairobi.
Okay.
Right? These are things which are happening and can be seen.
All right.
Yes.
These are concerns that came, people have been talking about this. First, what you've just talked about, would the reverse have worked according to you, what happened yesterday? Banning private cars or making it very expensive for them to access the CBD at the expense, and allowing PSVs instead to access the CBD. Although the other issue is those with private cars are doing this because of convenience, which they still do not have. So I don't know what you...
Well, I think the key thing is for you to have an efficient transport system, you must give people alternatives. We must do credible alternatives, civilized alternatives. If you want somebody to leave his car at home, you must actually give them an alternative which they can use. That's what I'm saying. We bring modern train system. We bring these BRTs. Then people have no reason to drive to work. I think yesterday we had a big number of vehicles which came to the city. Not because they didn't have to, because they didn't have to. Because they didn't have alternative transport.
Right.
And this is what we would like to avoid. Kenyans have imported too many vehicles. We have 3.4 million vehicles in a country like ours with only 45 million people. That's a very high number. The key issue is let's give Kenyans alternative transport. The way you don't hear people complaining about going to Mombasa because now they have an SGR. The way you used to book buses and accidents on the way, now that's the thing of the past because we put SGR and it is serving Kenyans. The same way for intercity, we want to do for the intracity in Nairobi.
And you're saying then by at the same time when you give February, Kenyans will be able to leave their vehicles.
I believe so.
Private cars, and they'll have...
including everybody who does not want the inconvenience of traffic jams.
Traffic jam.
Yes.
And that would be a better alternative, isn't it?
From end of February.
Have we end of February? Okay,
Yes.
that's much. Okay, let's say much.
Yes.
Much.
Yes.
Have we done enough then to take care of the majority? This is in as far as public transport is concerned. Including the infrastructure that incorporates pedestrian walkways. We saw yesterday Kenyans walking and how dangerous it was for them, because in most of these roads we don't even have pedestrian walkways. To cross a road along University Way, I'm sure you've seen how difficult that is, or Outer Ring. Yet Outer Ring, for example, is a road that was constructed recently, or designed recently. So we don't even have pedestrian walkways. They cannot cross these roads. There are no cycling lanes. Footbridges are wanting. We saw what happened with the one in railways. So where do you place your priorities? Because these are things that Outer Ring did not happen a long time ago. Why was it not necessary to create sidewalks and, if necessary, footbridges?
I think what we've done is we have put those supporting infrastructures, but I would say possibly they're not enough. Take, for example...
They're hardly enough.
Take, for example, the superhighway. Mombasa, Nairobi, to Thika. We did the superhighway. We put those foot bridges.
They were not enough.
But still not enough, because also, as Kenyans, we have to learn one thing. You have to get used to using restricted crossing areas. You have seen people on this Mombasa Road. There's a foot bridge, they want to go other. Yeah? Those are the kind of things we like to avoid. That's why we are putting barriers along Mombasa Highway to avoid people crossing, because it's not safe for them to do so. The same thing we are doing for Outer Ring. Yes, it's heavily populated, so you find people are crossing everywhere. And you cannot put foot bridges everywhere, but you have to put what is enough to make sure it serves the people.
So are we going to see that? Is this part of your plans again?
Any highway we
to get more pedestrian walkways, are we going to see most of that now?
Any big project we do today, including, for example, the most recent one, which is Western Bypass from Ruaka to Nairobi, Nakuru Highway, there will be all those side lanes, interchanges to make sure that people do not get inconvenienced when they are going across those major investments.
Finally, we've seen you also coming up with plans. Sometimes they're frustrated by the courts. Not necessarily the courts, but litigation. I mean, when people go to court, are you accounting for judiciary intervention if someone goes to court? Would you giving me this timeline now of February, March?
Well, we would like to believe nobody will go to court. But you see, we also said...
Because the matatu industry, I mean, you said they're not very comfortable with these passes.
We also said, I think it would be so weird that somebody goes to court to stop a project of public interest. For us as a government, we will take that very seriously. It's like people try to stop the SGR. You remember? Even crossing through, see the national park and going to Gong.
For conservation, for
Yes, conservation, yeah. Good reason for that.
Yes.
But you see, there are other people who got frivolous, reasons. They go to court for the sake of going to court. I think judiciary will be working with us, because I don't think anybody should entertain that kind of thing.
Okay.
Anything for public interest.
When you're talking about these passes, is it important? Do you think it would be important so that you avoid these loopholes, that the government owns it completely?
Well,
initially you're doing it anyway. Yeah. Why not just
I think we just see how the pilot works. As you see, most countries, it's public sector driven. But because we have this association of matatu welfare associations, if we can incorporate them into a proper corporate body, for which government has got control in terms of policies, regulations, and everything else, then they can move their investments now from the matatus into this particular investment. Because you see, currently they have all these 30-seater. You have to ask yourselves, where will they go, these people? They have these investments, where will they go? And of course, they're adding value to the country's GDP. We would like them to be part and parcel of us. They are the ones who should run business, because government is not in the business of running business, except maybe for public interest. So we shall have the balanced view on that.
Finally, any more views on Nairobi regeneration and those things that you promised? When are we going to realize them? You talked about decongestion, you're talking about end of February, March next year.
Well, decongestion, yes, we'll start seeing some positive results from end of February after you bring these investments to play. In terms of beautification and environment, we've been to Nairobi River, we've taken decisions in terms of removing buildings in riparian land. You've seen about us putting a lot of investment on roads in Eastlands. In fact, we decided the only budget we had would put it to Eastlands, because that's where the majority of our people are. And when it rains, they get inconvenienced. So already things are happening, and we can show you actually in terms of the major outcomes in the major inner cities.
All right. James Macharia is the Cabinet Secretary, Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development. That's quite a mouthful and a lot of work.
And shipping and maritime.
Shipping and maritime, okay. And I'm hoping to have him at some point late this year or early next year to talk more about housing. There's a lot of things happening there. Of course, it's one of the big four agenda items in Uhuru's promise to Kenyans. Thank you so much, Cabinet Secretary James Macharia. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Talk to us. The hashtag is Newsnight on Twitter. Text us on 22422. We're back after this.
Santi.